Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to 61 Bard, the Rogue Support Soul. A Bard's main role is to push collective raid DPS and survivability much higher with the raid cooldowns, buffs, and debuffs that they provide. So if you're a rogue, this is a build that I definitely recommend that you have in your arsenal. In this guide I'll be showing you where to put your soul points, which masteries to use, and how to play Bard, so let's get started. Looking at the soul tree breakdown, you'll see we do the full 61 points in Bard. That is because when you're playing Bard, typically it's because you want to have Orchestra of the Plains, which is a 15% damage increase over 15 seconds for your raid. Moving over to the secondary soul, we got 10 in Marksman, which puts 5 in Kenai, which increases the attack power and weapon damage contribution to your ranged attacks by 5%, and then 5 in increased firepower, which makes your critical hits increase your weapon damage and attack power by 10%. As an added bonus for going into Marksman, you also pick up on the double, which is a nice little speed buff. Moving over to the third soul, we take 5 in Riftstalker for 5 in Unseen Fury, increasing your attack power and weapon damage by 10%. Also, for going into Riftstalker, you pick up a nice couple little passive bonuses here, like increases the base health, armor, and resist. And you also pick up a Shadow Shift, which is a teleport, and also a 200 endurance buff there. Alternatively, if you don't want to go into Riftstalker, you can do 5 in Nightblade, which lets you pick up the same 10% attack power and weapon damage, and also another 2.5% passive soul gift damage as well, but you do lose a lot of the survivability stuff that you get with Riftstalker. Moving over to the masteries, level 61, we take Planar Replenishment. This allows your Power Chord to cast all known motifs on use. Your motifs, typically you don't have an issue keeping those up most of the time because your codas will refresh them. However, this makes it absolutely 100% uptime. Moving up to 62, we take Ascended Biology. This makes your Cadenza now benefit from points spent in Invigorated Soul. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, Invigorated Soul makes your Cadence, which is another channel that you have, heal up to 10 party raid members for 6% of your attack power each time it deals damage. So before Nightmare Tide launched, you would use Cadence for healing and Cadenza for DPS. Well, now your Cadenza also procs the same healing, so you can just forget about Cadence altogether. Moving over to 63, we take Boundless Energy. This is a energy regeneration. Damaging abilities have a 20% chance to restore 4 energy. Level 64, we take Time Focus for the DPS increase you get. Level 65, we take Energy Manipulation, which is again a single target DPS increase. Now for level 65, if you want to, you can take Planar Variation, which is a powerful healing and or DPS cooldown depending on how you use it and which situation you use it. But for DPS's sake, I would say Energy Manipulation is your best bet. So that's it for the soul and the masteries, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about the macros. So looking at the macros here, we just have a couple. Starting at the top, we have the Spam macro, which is going to have your Verse of Agony in it, which is your hardest hitting DPS ability. It's also going to have a Cast at Self Energy Manipulation in there to help you manage that. We also have Power Chord here, which is this fella right here. And we also have Cadenza, which is going to be your damage spammer, channel damage spammer. So moving on down, we have the Harmonic Distortion macro. Now Harmonic Distortion, you will get stacks of this every time you use a coda. Up to 5, you can either leave them on you for the 25% increase to damage, or you can use them for a small heal. It heals for about 8k health or so. So you can use it to help out with spot healing when you need to. Moving on down, we have the Orchestra macro, probably one of the most important ones of this build. It basically just casts your Orchestra of the Plains for you, followed by your Verse of Joy. For those of you who aren't familiar with Verse of Joy, it's going to be a charge, mana, power, and energy regeneration ability that typically you'll want to pair up with Orchestra because everybody's going to be spamming their hard-hitting abilities during that time. You want to make sure they don't bottom out. So moving on down, also we have a Yell here, which just basically lets your raid know, hey, just so you know, this stuff's out, so use your big cooldowns. So moving on down one more, we got the shield, Verse of Occlusion, Verse of Vitality. Verse of Occlusion is a small little shield, about 6k damage or so. Good for some nice damage soak. Verse of Vitality is a pretty weak AoE heal, but it definitely, I guess it can help in a pinch. Not too powerful there. Moving up to the top, these three right here are just so that I can label them. Your Coda of Jeopardy provides a 1900 damage increase, and then your Coda of Cowardice provides a 5% physical damage increase, and Coda of Distress provides a 7% non-physical, hence the 7, 5, and 1900 there. You don't have to make these if you don't want to. This is just to help you remember. So that's it for the macros, guys. Let's go ahead and jump into the action bar and the buffs that I use. So over here on the top left, we have Fanfare of Power. This is going to be your standard Strength, Dex, Intelligence, and Wisdom increase of 85 here. Fanfare of Vigor is an increase to Endurance of 85. We got Planebound Resilience from the Riftstalker tree, which increases Endurance by 200. We have 3 unique abilities here. Your Anthems. Anthem of Competence increases your movement speed by 15%. It does say out of combat, however with 61 points in bar we do pick up a skill that makes it usable in combat. Typically you'll be running this one because usually there'll be a Chloromancer in your raid running this one right here, this Fervor type. It's called Living Energy through Chloromancers, but if you do not have a Chloromancer running Living Energy, then you'll probably be asked to cast Fervor, at which point you'll just cast your Fervor buff and keep that up the whole time, which is a 5% ability cost reduction. Now, very rare cases, you may have to actually run your Anthem of Glory because these two will already be covered, but typically that probably won't happen. So moving over to the right, we got the Bard KARUUL Macro there. We have multiple oscillations right next to it. What this does is makes your Cadence, Cadenza, and Power Chord deal damage to 3 enemies instead of 1, but deal 50% less damage. So obviously this is only going to be a gain if there are 3 or more enemies, but you can toggle that on and off as needed. Moving down to the secondary bar, we have your motifs. These are pretty important. You're going to want to prep these before you start a fight. So you cast these, and they do a couple of cool different things here. So Motif of Bravery increases attack power and spell power by 275, and increases critical hit chance by 1%. Motif of Regeneration restores health over 20 seconds, but the main part is it increases your healing received by 5%. And then Motif of Tenacity reduces damage taken by 5% on all party or raid members for 20 seconds. So these are pretty important buffs here. And also to note, when you have all 3 of these up at the same time, you pick up an additional buff called Resonance, which increases all your other stats by an additional 5%. So moving over to the keybinds here, you can see I got Q, Z, E, and R keybinds here. This one is Coda of Jeopardy, causes the enemy to take an additional 1900 physical damage. You can trigger this every 3 seconds. As a bard, this is the one you'll typically be asked to cast the most because the mage version of this only lasts for 20 seconds, so yours lasts a little bit longer. Moving over to the right on the Z key and the E key, we have Coda of Cowardice, which increases physical damage taken by 5%, and Coda of Distress, which increases non-physical damage taken by 7%. Now these two right here, typically you won't have to cast because the Archon has versions of these abilities that last like 5 minutes. So you'll be asked generally just to cast your Coda of Jeopardy, but these are here just in case you aren't running an Archon, which typically doesn't happen, but just in case you aren't, they're there. Moving over to the R keybind, this is where we have the Orchestra of the Plains macro. Again, it's going to have Orchestra of the Plains as well as your Verse of Joy, which is going to be your charge, mana, power, and energy regenerator. So make sure that you hit this twice when you do hit it. All the way over here on the right, we have Verse of Captivation. This is a mesmerize for 8 seconds or until damage. Not really super useful in PvE, but can have its uses in PvP if you so decide to run this build in PvP, which I don't recommend, by the way. So moving on down to the main bar here, this is the spam macro, Verse of Agony, which is also going to have your Power Chord in it, and also going to have your Cadenza. Now, quick note on Power Chord, the reason that Power Chord is in the macro and you want to cast it every 4 seconds is 1, it does halfway decent damage and provides 2 combo points, but it also gives you a 9% of your attack power shield every time you cast it, so it makes it some really nice damage soak there. I think with my gear it gives approximately 800 hit point shield every 4 seconds. Also with Cadenza, remember that it's going to heal when you're channeling this. It's going to heal for that attack power conversion for you as well. So it's really nice to have that channeling, get the little passive healing there. Moving over to the number 2 here, we have Coda of Wrath. This is going to be your standard single target finisher. Number 3, we have Coda of Restoration. This is going to be your healing AoE finisher. Number 4, we have the Shield macro, which remember has Verse of Occlusion, which is your shield, and also Verse of Vitality in it, which is a small little heal. Moving over to the 5th key, we have Harmonic Distortion. You can use this as a spot heal. Typically I don't use this unless I have to, because the 25% damage increase that you get from having the stacks up is pretty valuable stuff. Moving over to the right, we have Coda of Fury. This is going to be your AoE finisher. Number 7, we have Riff. This one's pretty unique. It deals about 16k damage, but it also awards 5 combo points, so pretty nice stuff there. Number 8 is Virtuoso. This one's a pretty sweet damage cooldown. Causes combo points to persist when using codas, and it lasts 15 seconds. So you can see if you have full combo points like we do now and you hit this, you could spam your Coda of Wrath repeatedly for 15 seconds to get some pretty good DPS numbers. Moving on to 9, we get the Shadow Shift. This is a teleport we picked up from Riftstalker. On the 0 key, if you guys have watched my guides before, you know it's mapped to my middle click, and I usually put important stuff like interrupts and cleanses on there. So we do have a cleanse on there right now, and this is actually unique in that it's a double cleanse. It removes 1 curse, disease, or poison from up to 10 party raid members every 3 seconds for 3 seconds. What that basically means is that it does the cleanse, and then 3 seconds later, it does another cleanse for a double cleanse for 1 press. So pretty good stuff there. On the minus key, we have the standard break free, and on the equals key, we got the on the double that we picked up from Marksman. Now the reason that we pick up on the double and the teleport is because as a bard, you're probably going to be asked to do a few of the different mechanics throughout the raids, and it's definitely nice to have some mobility to be able to do so reliably. So that's it for the action bar and the buffs, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about the K alerts really quick. So we do track a few things here, mostly just the codas and the motifs. There are a couple of other things that you could track if you wanted to. However, this is the most important stuff in my opinion. So go ahead and hit edit layout. You'll see we have the 3 motifs there, and then we have our 3 codas. Now typically, as I said before, the Archon will cover these 2 buffs here, so it'll mostly just be making sure that you have these 3 up, and this guy up here. And your motifs will be refreshed automatically by your codas, so you shouldn't even have to worry about that. But that's it for K-Lyrics, guys. I guess now we'll go ahead and talk about how to play Bard. As a Bard, the first thing you're going to want to do is coordinate with your raid leader or your Archon to figure out when Flaring Power is going out. Now typically it's going to be going on about 3 or 4 global cooldowns in as per the average, but that could be different depending on your raid, if it's a pug or if it's a guild run. So we're going to pretend today that it's at the 4th global cooldown, and that's when we're going to fire off our Orchestra since that's the average. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is swap over to your Saboteur spec because you want to preload all your combo points. So we're swapping over to Sab really quick. We're going to target the boss. We're going to fire off our rapid setup really quick, and then Krautropp charge, which is going to give us our 5 combo points. Since we're in Sab and we have the full 61, it won't aggro the boss at all. So now we're going to go back to our rolls and swap back to Bard. Should take just 1 second. Now we're going to go ahead and rebuff up. Don't forget to rebuff after you do this, of course. We're going to go ahead and put an Anthem of Fervor. Make sure that our K-Alerts are correct. So now we have 5 combo points and we're ready to go. The first thing you're going to want to do is preload your motifs. So you'll come down here and manually hit all 3 of your motifs here and get those up and ticking. Now if you don't want to do that, it's fine. It's not too terribly important because once you hit your macro, your spam macro for the second time, it will cast Power Chord, which will cast these anyway. But I like to have these up and ticking before the fight even starts. So we preload the motifs. After you preload the motifs, you'll hit your Coda of Jeopardy since you already have the 5 combo points. And then you'll go down to your 1 key and you'll hit Verse of Agony. And then you'll hit your 1 key again to cast Power Chord. At that point, you'll be on the 4th global cooldown, which at this point, the Flaring Power should be going out. So you're going to want to hit Orchestra. So you'll hit your R key to hit Orchestra, and you'll hit your R key again to hit Verse of Joy. At which point, you'll transition into hitting your Riff to give you 5 combo points again, and then hit Virtuoso to make them persist. At that point, you're going to move over to your finisher spam. You're going to mash your finisher until your combo points go away. Once that phase is over, you'll move into your 1 key, and you'll hit your 1 key to cast all the abilities in that macro until you get to 5 combo points and then finish. So you'll hit your 1 key a bunch of times, and then you'll finish. You'll keep doing that until you have to refresh your Coda of Jeopardy. So let's see what that looks like. We got our 5 combo points. We're going to go ahead and put up our motifs here real quick. Motifs are up. Now we're going to go ahead and hit Jeopardy, then Verse of Agony, Power Chord, Orchestra, Verse of Joy, Riff followed by Virtuoso, and then spam that 2 key. 2 is going to be your Coda of Wrath, which is your finisher. You'll notice that we're not losing combo points now, so we're going to start stacking up some DPS here real quick. As soon as the combo points run out, though, you definitely want to make sure you swap back to your number 1 key, which we should be here shortly running out. There we go. Back to your 1 key. Verse of Agony. Now you're going to have Cadenza, so don't clip that. Fire that off. More Cadenza. Fire that off. So we're doing about 36 or so. Not too shabby, especially for not actually being in a raid. Does pretty good DPS. Excellent support buffs. But that's pretty much the gist of it, guys. Once you get past that initial burst rotation, it's really just maintaining your buffs, and then when they're up, like Riff's up, hit Riff, finisher. So it's almost like an extra finisher within your rotation. So pretty easy stuff there. Of course, when I got down to it, you could probably refresh Coda of Jeopardy right now, actually, just to make sure that it stays up, because it ends up being quite a big DPS, especially for like 20 man. So. Alright, so let's talk about some alternates, right? So sometimes you might actually have to maintain all 3 of these codas. So you may not have to do just Coda of Jeopardy. So typically when I have to do that, I'm not going to do a bunch of builders and finishers a bunch of times to get these up. I want to get these up as soon as I possibly can. So a trick that you can do is you can fire off, to start off the fight, you can fire off your Riff to get 5 combo points and then do Virtuoso, and you can immediately fire off all 3 of these right away. And at that point you can fire off your codas until the Flaring Power goes out, which if you cast all 3 of these, and we're doing on the 4th global cooldown, if Flaring Power is going out, then once you get done casting these 3, you'd be casting your Orchestra of the Plains and Verse of Joy, and then you would start spamming your 2 key to catch the tail end of the Virtuoso. Now doing it this way, of course, is going to be a slight DPS loss for you because you are using the Virtuoso ticks to get off your codas as fast as you can instead of using them for DPS. However, if you do it that way, you will be able to get the mob debuffed much quicker. So the same thing applies if you're moving into like a healing perspective, like say a raid healer dies and you're trying to help keep the raid alive until they can get him back up. You do have Coda of Restoration here, which heals for about 4,000 health that you can spam. So you can hit your Virtuoso and you can just constantly spam that Coda of Restoration, and it will actually deal a significant amount of health. So those are just a couple of different options you have as a Bard. That's pretty much it, guys. Bard's relatively easy to play. It's all about keeping your buffs up and making sure that you're doing your little 1 to 2 rotation there, and making sure that you're casting Orchestra on cooldown typically, unless the raid leader says otherwise, because you want to make sure that it's lining up every 2 minutes, because most classes their cooldowns are set for a minute. So if you keep casting this right back to back, you'll make sure that everything lines up nice and pretty for everybody. So as always, guys, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And don't forget to check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/chamberdown, and I will see you guys next time.